All right, let's just jump right in because today we are talking about what is, without a doubt, the single biggest, most profound mystery in all of science, and maybe all of philosophy too. We're talking about consciousness. Seriously, just stop and think about this for a second. It's not some trick question. Why does it feel like something to be you? I mean, yeah, you've got all this stuff happening in your brain, electrical signals, chemical reactions, the works, but why isn't it all just happening in the dark? Why do you have this inner movie playing, this first-person view of your own life? That feeling right there, that's the core of the mystery we're going to try and unpack today. So, you know what? Let's treat this whole thing like a detective story. And in any good investigation, the first thing you have to do is just lay out the facts of the case. So, what on earth are we even talking about when we say the word consciousness? Okay, so the textbook definition is basically the state of awareness. It's the ability to know you exist, to see and hear and feel the world around you, and, this is the really important part, to have that private, internal, first-person point of view. It's the you-ness of you. It's what makes you, you. Now, scientists like to break this down into two main parts. First up, you've got arousal or wakefulness. Think of this like the power switch for your brain. It's the basic biological state of just being, well, on. It's regulated by your brainstem. But look, just having the power on isn't the whole story, right? That brings us to the second part, awareness. This is the good stuff. This is the content of your experience, the actual feeling of seeing the color red, or tasting your morning coffee, or getting a song stuck in your head. That is where the real mystery kicks in. And this very distinction between being on and having an experience brings us right to the heart of the puzzle. It's a concept so huge, so central to this whole case, that the philosopher David Chalmers gave it a really famous name, the hard problem. And this does a great job of laying it all out. On one side, you have what are called the easy problems. Now, let's be clear, they are not easy at all. They're incredibly complex, but they're problems of function. Like, how does the brain process what our eyes see? How does it pull together different pieces of information? We can, stick people in an fMRI and map the neural pathways for that stuff. But then you have the hard problem. And that's all about experience. Why isn't all that processing just mechanical? Why is it accompanied by a subjective feeling? So here's the bottom line. We can explain how your brain registers the wavelength of red light, but we have absolutely no idea why that feels like the experience of seeing red. Okay, so if you're a detective on this case, where's the first place you're going to look for clues? Well, the brain, of course. So scientists are on this massive hunt for something they call the neural correlates of consciousness. So what's an NCC? It's basically the smallest possible bit of brain activity that you need for a specific conscious feeling. I mean, if we could find the exact pattern of neurons that fire that is the experience of seeing your mom's face, we'd have found the NCC for that. It's literally a search for the brain's consciousness code. And in this hunt, there are two main suspects, two leading theories that are really duking it out. First, you've got integrated information theory, or IIT for short. Its big idea is that consciousness is basically a measure of how much information a system can weave together, and it tends to point to the back of the brain, the posterior cortex. Then, on the other side, you've got global workspace theory, or GWT. This one paints a picture of the brain as a kind of theater. Consciousness is whatever information gets broadcast up on stage into this global workspace for the whole brain to see. And this theory tends to focus on the prefrontal cortex, right up front. But what if the clues aren't just buried in the brain's wiring? What if the problem is bigger than that? This is where our investigation has to widen, moving from pure neuroscience into the wild world of philosophy and asking questions about the very nature of reality itself. All right, so let's check out our first philosophical viewpoint, and honestly, it's the one most scientists today would probably lean towards: materialism. The core idea of materialism is simple, but powerful. There is no ghost in the machine. Consciousness is just what the brain does. It's a super complex, emergent property of all those physical neurons and chemicals firing. Materialists believe that once we fully understand the brain, the mystery of consciousness will just dissolve. It'll be explained as a totally natural biological thing, no different than how the stomach digests food. But that's not the only game in town. There's a much older, and for many people, a much more intuitive idea. This one was famously championed by René Descartes, and it's called dualism.
Dualism says, hold on a second. It proposes that your mind, your actual subjective consciousness, is not a physical thing at all. It's a completely separate, non-physical substance that somehow interacts with your physical brain. Now, this lines up with how a lot of us feel, right? But it creates this massive logical headache. How on earth can something non-physical reach in and cause a physical thing, like a neuron, to fire?
Okay, and that brings us to our final suspect, and this is maybe the most mind-bending, out there idea of them all, so get ready for this one. It's called panpsychism. Panpsychism basically flips the entire problem on its head. It suggests that the brain doesn't create consciousness from scratch. Instead, consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe itself, just like mass or electric charge. It's baked into everything. So under this view, maybe an electron has a teeny tiny, super simple spark of experience. A rock has a little bit more. And your brain? Well, your brain is just an incredibly complex structure that's amazing at organizing all these fundamental little bits of consciousness into the rich, unified technicolor experience that you're having right now. So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, as you can probably guess, the case is far, far from closed. In fact, this is one of the hottest, most active investigations happening in science today. And the answer isn't going to come from just one lab or one field of study. Solving this thing is going to require a massive team effort. We're talking neuroscientists, philosophers, psychologists, even physicists, all of them bringing their unique clues to the table, trying to piece together this ultimate puzzle. Which really leaves us with one final huge question to chew on. Is consciousness a problem that we can and will eventually solve? Like cracking the human genome? Or is the subjective, unshareable nature of our own inner world a fundamental mystery that will always be just beyond our scientific grasp? Maybe, just maybe, that very mystery is an essential part of what it even means to be human.